Hey, everybody, welcome back to the WorkHappy podcast. Today, my guest is a new friend. He's an author, speaker, trainer, and coach. His book is Live Your Possible, and it's actually right on my piano there, and I'm going to be asking Darrin about that more. I have not gotten into it, but Darrin and I met through a mutual friend on LinkedIn, and so I'm really excited about that. He has his own podcast coming out in February. And like I said, he's a good human being. He's a dad. He's transitioned into speaking and training and workshops. So welcome, Darrin Tulley. And I hope I got your name right, Darrin.
You got it, Greg. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about some happy stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I was doing some healthy creeping and I saw a lot of pictures on a golf course. So I'm assuming that you're a golfer as well.
I try.
Okay.
I enjoy getting out there, that's for sure.
I was talking with my my business coach actually this morning, and he was trying to come with an analogy, saying, your first podcast isn't going to be that great or your first talk, but the more you do it, the better it gets. He goes, kind of like golf. And I was like, well, I'm still shooting at golf and I've been playing for 10 years.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
So he decided that's not a really good analogy on getting better. But welcome. It's great to meet you. Like I said in the intro, we've only been friends for a couple of weeks, but the conversations we've had, you graciously sent me a book, which I'm excited to get into. But tell us a little bit about Darrin, how you got to where you are now and what your purpose and your passion is now.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I started my career loving numbers and results. I actually started as an accountant, so I had a love for numbers and working with different people and leaders to really get what I would say are the best outcomes. I thought that was exciting and fun at that time, and literally about 6 years ago, I recognized I had it upside down because I wasn't focused enough on the right things. I recognized, that I was not working with people directly. And I recognized I was not giving people the best opportunities and partnering and really creating the joy that should belong in the workplace. And that's when I started Ignite Happy, which is my management consulting firm where I do speak, coach, and consult. And that's been quite the journey in the sense that I've been working with different leaders and how to engage their people differently, how to work and how to love and how to have joy to really get the results that we all want. And it's been 6 years since I had this awakening.
What was the tipping point, if you care to share?
Yeah,
was it hit you over the head or gradually?
It was a culmination of things. I recognized I was not doing my best as far as being as inclusive. At a diversity and inclusion event. I was actually at a 4-day immersion event, and it was a pretty diverse group of folks. There's 25 of us. I was one of 5 white males at this event, and I always looked at myself as a happy-go-lucky leader, very supportive, very engaging. And I recognized I wasn't, or at least I was to people that were maybe had some similarities to me, that looked like me possibly, or like the same teams or whatever that might be. And I realized after a couple of days at this event that I wasn't really aware of the struggles that were happening to them. And I recognized that I wasn't doing my part to actually dig in enough or care enough or listen enough. And then I started to dig deeper. I started to realize I was actually pushing people away. Like I was living in this bubble, pushing people away that I didn't know, or I was uncomfortable with differences. And I recognized at that point that my bubble totally burst. And I was deflated. I was terrified. I was ashamed. And I actually addressed this group on the third day, and I asked for their forgiveness because I wasn't living as authentically as I thought I could or should, nor was I being a leader that actually cared. I said I cared, but I wasn't really caring in bringing out the best in people all around me, only people that were in my bubble, so to speak. And I was crying, Greg. Who cries at work, right? That's what I thought. You're not supposed to. It's like no crying in baseball. And I recognized though that the people that were looking at me, there was love, there was anger, there was sadness, yet what I could was hope. Because I feel like I turned myself upside down because I recognized I was not doing my best work. I was living with some unconscious biases I was not even aware of.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I was a terrible person. I just needed to do better. I needed to be responsible going forward. I needed to really change my direction. And then I had another moment with my daughter where she was having this Italian ice. And we, when she finished, she was all happy. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And I looked to the corner and you know what it was? It was this one-eyed smile that was upside down looking at me. There's the logo in my book there. And that's when I came alive. That's when the kid inside of me came alive to recognize, hey, I noticed something that was totally different. It's silly. It's this one-eyed smile. I said, hey, City, take a look at this. I turned it over, and she just was amazed, eyes and mouth wide open. I did the same thing. I feel like I came alive. I recognized the joy that she had in the moment was the joy I was in the moment. The fact that I could help her get this way is really what I'm all about. And I wasn't recognizing that. And I needed to be different. I need to look at the thing differently out in the world. And that moment is what set me on this course to write this book, to start Ignite Happy, to really turn myself around, to say, I need to focus on people first. And I needed to welcome differences. And I needed to change my purpose. I mean, my purpose initially was to really bring out the best in people around me every day. And I needed to change my purpose at this time to see there's a beautiful light inside of all of us. Like I need to look for that light inside of you, Greg, and inside of everybody I meet. Because when I do that, I actually move past the barriers that I've been taught or I've been told or that I was unrightly thinking about. I need to look at the beauty that's inside of all of us. That's where possibilities live. That's where the beauty that we all have. That's where the joy sits. And that's where I am with Ignite Happy, where I am with my speaking and my books. It's really bringing out the joy I have too, selfishly. At the same time, I think it's bringing out a ton of opportunities and possibilities for everybody around me every single day. And that's how I got here. And that's my purpose today, is to bring out really the light, turn up the light in all of us, where creativity, possibilities, love, happiness, joy, opportunities, all that really can thrive.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. I love it. You know, how it came together. You were sitting in a seminar and all of a sudden it hit you. And like you said, you had no idea. You thought you were doing everything right, but sometimes it just takes, I don't know if it's age or experience or what, but when these things line up, you're in that seminar and then you're talking to your daughter and you get it. And it's amazing and good on you for seeing that, because I think a lot of us, and I really didn't find my purpose till 3 or 4 years ago too. I mean, I was 44 when I got married, right? I thought I was going to do stand-up comedy the rest of my life and couch surf because I loved being on stage and I loved making people happy. And then I found out that you can actually make a difference in somebody's life instead of making somebody laugh for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I love that. And it's amazing how it does hit us. And it hits us, I would say, in different moments of our life. And are we ready to accept it? Are we ready to embrace what the messages are? I think we've been giving these messages along the way, and it could be age or where we are in our life, or maybe there's a bad moment, or maybe we left a job, or maybe, I had that moment where, do I want to just hide behind the fact that I'm not being a really good human being, where my authentic self is to care and love for other people? Do I want to just deny it? Do I want to hide in my bubble? Do I want to be afraid of what I'm giving up? And those are all the things I was doing until I recognized that I needed to break wide open.
Yeah.
And not hide. And that's really what's opened up my world. And that's why I have the book called Live Your Possible, because it's filled with possibilities, because we all are. We're all unique and different. And, seeing your smile and seeing other people smile and believe, that is what gets me excited.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And like you said, at that time you asked for people for forgiveness and people were forgiving. And obviously
Absolutely.
there was probably some anger and some pain and some confusion for everybody, but you took that step. And I love it when people can listen and understand. Like you said, you were living in that bubble. I was living in a bubble too, right? But when we listen and we learn and we have communication, we can see the other angles and get to know each other and going, oh, I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, but here we are. 6 years later, you're living in your purpose. You're making a difference in my life. You're making a difference in people's lives and anybody else, who reads your book. I was, reading some of your reviews on Amazon. And it's just, it's great. One person said, before I read Live Your Possible, I was stuck in a cycle of existing yet not living. And then
Oh,
someone else said, I love the life lessons, the stories, the tips, and the awakening that happens from this book. There's nothing more powerful than realizing your purpose, and this book will help you do just that. And you just watching you, when I read that to you, I could just see like you just like, that's my purpose. That makes me happy.
yeah, it does make me happy. And it
That's
makes me happy
awesome.
that other people are feeling it and seeing that for themselves and believing themselves and knowing that we're each possible. Because
Yeah.
too often we're sitting there about judging ourselves or each other, or we're not believing in ourselves. We're looking in the mirror saying, gosh, I wish I did this or that. It's like, it's looking in the mirror to say, wow, I could do a lot today, and being
Yeah.
grateful for what I have and then doing something with that. And it's hard. That's not the way we're wired as humans. We like to look at the other side of things more often than not. And looking at the positive opportunities that are ahead of us, I think are pretty key. And being vulnerable too, to your point,
Yeah.
I've recognized that is one of the most powerful tools, is to be vulnerable, being sincere and vulnerable, being genuine and vulnerable with good intentions. All those things have to go with it. You're not looking to manipulate a situation, or you're not, trying to control a dynamic. You're really trying to share, wait a minute, I have something that I need to work on, and I need your help, or I want you to know. And it's amazing what people do. They'll pick you up if you're sincere and you're honest, or if you're looking for help. Because as a leader, I've always been told, hey, you have to have all the answers. You can't say I don't know. You're not really supposed to ask for questions and for help. And what kind of happiness is that in the workplace?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And for people who don't know yourself or myself, we both kind of work with organizations on how do we find that purpose? How do we find happiness and joy at work? Because we're there a big percent of the time. I was just reading a study done just recently, and they said that 92% of employees want to be felt like they heard and that their opinion matters at work.
Yeah,
And I'm like, 92%. Like, I don't know what the
absolutely.
other 8% are worried about, but I'm with the 92%, right? I mean, how many jobs
Yeah,
have you and I had, or how many bosses, or what kind of bosses that we've had that we haven't done that? Even a pat on the
yeah,
back, or hey, thanks for staying late. I know you got family and you could have been at your son's baseball game, but here you are, doing what's right for the company. So having
yeah.
that purpose and igniting happiness in the workplace is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, you're talking squarely about empathy, meeting people with where they are, and genuine care. And I think they're 8%. Greg, I read something about how people will stay in a toxic culture if they get paid 40% more. So I don't know, maybe the 8%, they want to get 40% more, compensation, and they'll deal with it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I my whole career I worked for money, right? I went to college and I started working. I was like, well, if I make enough money, I can have the house that I want and be married and travel and stuff. And then I had all that, and
Yeah.
I was the last job I had. I was told I was non-essential during the pandemic, and I told my boss I thought he was non-essential. Um, but he was the boss, and at the time, and when he told me that, there was zero empathy. He's like, all right, see, come pick up your stuff tomorrow. That was it. That's how he told me. That's how I found
Wow.
out that my job was eliminated. But looking back 2 years, the amount of empathy I've had for other people, and when you talk, and I know you get the same thing after you've done a talk, people come up to you and say, thank you so much. Here's my story. And, just the stories that you hear, whether they're in person or online or a text, is just, it takes place of the money. And I haven't worried about money for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I love what I do, and the money's there, and my family is taken care of, and I'm happy, man.
I love
So
it.
it's,
You're focusing on the right things, with faith that the results will follow if you need, enough money to pay for the needs that you have. And I think it's beautiful. And I agree with the power of people coming up to say something. So I would encourage people, if you hear Greg talk, go and give him a compliment and how you connected with them or myself, because we love it. And one of the things that I recall that moved me once is I talked about how I was helping out some that didn't have beds. So I was actually delivering beds to inner city families, and I remember bawling and crying, and the situation when I got home, and I was sharing the story at work, because at work they were actually doing a collection for money that they were actually going to give beds to children that need it in the community. And it was a shock to me. So I was already caught up in emotion. So I shared it with my group, and I started to cry. And this woman came up to me afterwards and said, Darrin, like, I can't believe you just cried at work, and that it's so empowering and you're so vulnerable. And she's like, from now on, I'm never going to get upset at my big grown boys if they cry, because you know what, they deserve to cry. If you can cry, they can cry. I mean, that was so moving to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that meant
And
the
I
world to
think,
me.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, crying is a great emotion. And in a weird way, it's part of happiness, right? Because
Yes.
if we never have those emotions, we can't feel the joy, that comes from it. And I remember, like you saying, crying in front of your staff or your coworkers. I was presenting to an organization, they're a construction company. And during the middle of my talk, I started crying. I teared up and choked up, and I said, "Give me a second." I turned around, took a couple of deep breaths, had some water, and finished the talk. And immediately after, I was walking out of the room, and this younger gentleman followed me up, and he said, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you." And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And we stood outside in the snow, and he was just overwhelmed. He goes, "I can't believe you did that. I've never seen a man cry in a public setting." And he told me his story
Wow.
about dealing with crippling anxiety. And from there, I was the first person that, other than his doctor and his wife of 25 years, that
Wow.
he had told that he had this crippling anxiety. And we're having a conversation, we're talking about mental health, and all of a sudden, a guy that works with him comes running up. He goes, "Hey, what are you guys talking about?" And he's like, "We're talking about mental health and anxiety. Join us." And he goes, "Well, I got a bad marriage. Can you guys help me
Oh,
out?"
jeez.
Like, no, we're talking about anxiety, dude. But so here's three dudes that I'd never met. These two guys, they'd never met me. But after
Yeah,
me showing my vulnerability, they're willing to talk about it. And after you
that's
have a good
beautiful.
cry, there's always happiness, and there's always goodness that comes out of it. So I believe that
Yeah.
crying is a part of a healthy mental health and a healthy life, right? You have to have balance.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. I love your story there. And I didn't know we are going to talk about crying today, Greg. And I appreciate
Yeah.
us going here. I will say too is, one of the moments where I recognized something was wrong about 6 years ago before my awakening is I've been in the executive area of a company, right? So you kind of have to walk a certain way. And
Yeah.
I was, my background, I was pretty, I'll just admit it, I was uptight and I was serious, and my range of emotions were probably like this. And I remember we were upstairs in this area, and someone, I guess, made a joke, and I actually laughed, which sounds funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, the woman there goes, "Wow, I've never seen you laugh before." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, I love to laugh. And like to your point, like I think I lost my range of emotions even more with where I was at that point in time. And then I started to see things more clear. Like you need to have the range of emotions. Sometimes we have to be sad to see the good. We have to be courageous to, to be vulnerable. We have to see all sides of things. And I think it helps us pull ourselves out of different moments. Like if there is darkness, we can like to the lighter side more quickly. If we do feel like there's misery, we can find joy. It's not always there as far as it's just you tap into it. Yet we know we can. It's never far away. I always feel like I feel like happiness is truly within us. It's that light that's inside us that we just got to recognize it, and we have to take actions to bring it out. Maybe it is just a tap, but I think you know what I mean. I think it's just a matter of how do we kind of look at life, and how do we move forward and kind of own it,
Yeah.
and have that full range of emotion again.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I never really thought of it as having a full range of emotion in the workplace, whether you're leading or you're following, right? Have that, it's okay to laugh, obviously
Yeah,
appropriately, but it's okay to cry as well too. I mean, both
yeah,
both those emotions will connect us. I mean, I've never laughed with somebody and not wanted to hang out with them, right?
yeah.
And
Right.
when I've cried with people, whether it's family or my wife or my daughter, or coworkers or people on Zoom, whatever it is, there's a connection there that I mean, you're being vulnerable, and at the same time, I think when I cry and people see me cry, they're like, "Oh, that's okay." I can do that,
Yeah, exactly.
so.
Powerful.
Cool. Well, hey, before we wrap up, I will put in the show notes where everybody can get your book on Amazon. But if you had to wrap up your amazing book in 2 or 3 points, how do people live their possible? What is something somebody can take away from this podcast today and start living their possible?
To me, I'm really trying to guide people to pursue an authentic, inclusive and joyful life. That's what I'm trying to do. So it's really getting to the root of ourselves, our authentic selves, and really look at that level of purpose, inviting the world in differently, understanding who we really are and how we want to connect back. Because I do believe that the steps that we can take can reconnect ourselves to our authentic selves in the world and really have a huge impact on our surroundings. And I think it could stoke and spark happiness within us. People will see it. And then people are going to want to know what happened? How'd you get there? And then they're going to follow suit. And then you're going to want to help them. And it's one of those repetitive rippling effects that can happen. Yet it starts with each of us. And when we get core who we really are, we really want to help each other be happy. We really want to help each other be successful and thrive in life. Were we born actually to make life miserable for other people? No, that wasn't how we were born. So how do we get back to like our childlike ways, living with wonder and awe and love? And my whole book goes through a whole series of experiential questions and intentional practice actions that people could actually practice as part of their day. I'm not looking for people to change into somebody else. You have to change back into who they really are.
I love that, right? It's not me following somebody else, but it's myself following me and going back. And I love that, right? Going back to your childhood. And I wish I would have done that earlier, but a lot of us probably wish we would have done that, right? Not strayed from our childhood ways, but doing silly things and being a kid and finding that purpose and finding joy and loving authentically, I think is brilliant.
Yeah, and I think we should all take a moment and just go reflect on a few moments from our childhood. Maybe some highlights when we're our most creative selves, because there's a lot of research out there about creativity. 98% of 5-year-olds show that they're able to be creative, but it's only 2% when you become an adult. So I don't know what happens. Yeah, I think we should go back. We should go back and rewind and really think about how we looked at life, because it was different and it was pretty special. I think we really got to spark that light again.
Yeah, no, that's a great stat, and one that I use often and when I speak is children laugh up to 300 times a day, and adults 17. So somewhere we've lost that joy, right?
That's a
Well,
great
hey,
one.
before we wrap up, Darrin, I like to do a rapid fire, 3 quick questions, short as answers as possible, anywhere from 1 word to a sentence. If you go on for a chapter, I'll cut you off. But so question number 1 on the rapid fire: what was the best job you've ever had?
The best job I had was actually being a journalist as a 9-year-old paperboy when we started our own newspaper on Sylvan Gazette, the street that I lived on.
That's awesome. We had a journal or a paper, if you could call it that, in high school, and I was Mr. Chuckles. My buddy reminded me about that in
That's
at our
awesome.
30th reunion. So, question number 2: what was the last book you read that we should read?
Chief Joy Officer by Richard Sheridan. He's an amazing leader from Menlo Innovations and storyteller. It really allows us to think how we could lead with joy. And he's been a mentor of mine, and he's actually wrote the foreword of my book. So it's a must read.
Okay, great. And last but not least, what makes you happy, Darrin?
Seeing you happy, Greg. No, it's really seeing people feel like they belong, they can be included, that there's possibilities in front of them, there's hope, there's love, and seeing people just open their eyes up again and feel like they are possible and they're filled with joy. That's what gets me so happy. Obviously, I love when my family's happy and healthy. Yeah, when it comes down to the core of every day when we walk around and see people, that's what I want to do. I'm trying to ignite people to really live that authentic, inclusive, and joyful life.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thanks again, Darrin, for being on. Thank you for listening. Please check out Darrin's book on Amazon, Live Your Possible. You can find him. His website is ignitehappy.com. He has a podcast coming out starting in February. And thanks again, Darrin. And if there's anything I can ever do to help spread your message, please let me know. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. Until next time, work happy. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. Cheers.